Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, Finalising the Accounts for End of Financial Year. My name is Emma Fabbro. I work at Fusion Accountants, and I'm your host for today's session. It is great to have you join us today, and before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, which for me in Adelaide is the Kaurna people, and to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. In today's session, it's all about the end of financial year. We're going to look at using tools within our QBO files, and we'll cover things like prep for taxes, work papers, special purpose financial reports, and more. Now, if you're not familiar with the QuickBooks suite, let me give you a quick overview. It's likely that everyone on the call today is aware of Intuit's flagship product, QuickBooks Online. Given that it's used by over 300,000 accountants and bookkeepers and more than 5.1 million small businesses around the world. Importantly, QBO includes a number of exclusive features that only accountants and bookkeepers can access to help you power through your day. Then we have QuickBooks Online Accountant, or QBO-A, which helps you manage your practice as well as clients. Using QBO-A, you can manage your clients, keep on top of your workflow, and track time and billing. On the compliance front, QuickBooks Tax powered by Lodgit is a powerful online tool to help you manage your tax and BAS preparation and lodgement needs. One of the key features that makes QuickBooks Tax unique is the ability to import data from various accounting systems, not just QuickBooks Online. So it works for all your small business clients. Before we get started, let me take you through some housekeeping. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So if you have a question, please submit it through the Q&A box and we'll aim to answer as many as we can. Today's event is being recorded, so we'll be providing everyone who registered with a copy via email. So watch out for an email in your inbox that will let you review any of the content shared today or share it with other team members. If you're having technical difficulties with not being able to see or hear the presentation, we suggest restarting your device, refreshing your browser, or trying a different device. Again, you will receive a recording of the session. So while it's not as good as the live thing, no need to panic that you'll miss out. When it gets to live demo time, to see the screen better, we recommend you click the arrow icon to maximize it. But note, it takes a few moments for the screen to render. So if the screen appears blurry at first, just give it a few minutes to clear up. Now that the housekeeping is out of the way, it's on to today's session. As I mentioned, my name is Emma Fabbro. I'm a fellow certified practicing accountant and a member of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network in Australia. So our agenda for today, we are going to first of all talk about the Work tab, which is in our QBO-A platform. We're then going to talk about prep for taxes and using prep for taxes for end of year compliance. We're going to look at Lodgit, which is QuickBooks Tax, powered by Lodgit. We'll look at financial reporting and specifically preparing special purpose financial reports for our clients. And we'll also look at billing and fees, and again, using our QBO-A platform to do that. So finally, we will finish up with the Q&A as we get throughout the session. So I'm going to jump into my QBO-A platform. You'll see here in my QBO-A platform, I've got a list of my clients who are on the left-hand side. You can see the names. And so what we're going to do first of all is have a look at a particular client that we're going to work on today. This client is called Pooch Pamper House. And what I'm going to show you first of all within the QBO-A platform here is the notes section. So first of all, we've got some notes. Our director is Pamela. And I want to show you this shared documents tab. Under this shared documents, you'll notice a comment here that both you and your clients can view, add, and delete documents. You'll notice a permanent documents folder, and then you'll notice here a folder which is engagement letters. If we click on that folder, you'll notice a 2024 engagement letter for Pooch Pamper House. So an incredibly powerful way to share those updated engagement letters as a part of end of financial year with your clients. So we're going to come into our work tab now, which is on the left-hand menu. And what we're going to do here is we're going to create a project. So I'm going to come into Create Project. We're going to click on the template here, and I'm going to select a particular template, which I have on my file here. It's called Client Engagement Letters. We're going to select our client. So Pooch Pamper House. We'll select a due date, and we'll make the due date for this the week before the end of financial year, so 21st of June. We will assign it to, in this case here, we'll assign it to Laura Snape, one of our staff members. You can see here some descriptions, so we can add some details here, and there are several tasks here that we've got. All of these can be amended, updated, removed to suit the particular client. And then we will save. When we save that, we can see that task there on our work list due in the next 30 days. And as we go through the various tasks there, we can see there's 4 individual tasks, and we can mark them off as in progress and then done. I'm going to take you now back into our clients list. And we're going to start talking about prep for taxes. So prep for taxes can be accessed for every client, every QBO client, in 2 ways. So one, you'll notice here the prep for taxes column. So if we scroll down to our client, in this case here, Pooch Pamper House, we can click on Review Data. This will take us directly into our client's file, and it will take us into the prep for taxes area. So you'll see here we're coming in, our left-hand navigation menu has changed to the dark colour, and we are looking at our prep for taxes area. I'm going to take you back to our QBOA dashboard just so that we can see the other way that we can access our prep for taxes. So if we come down to the client we're working on and Pooch Pamper House, we click on the green QBO Online. This will take us into our client's QuickBooks Online file. So again, we've got that darker menu on the left-hand side, and we can see that we're looking at Pooch Pamper House. So the second way we access prep for taxes, under the Tools menu on the right-hand side, right down the bottom is prep for taxes. So prep for taxes is an exclusive area for advisors with a QBOA login. Your clients do not see or have access to this part of the software. With our prep for taxes, just to show you quickly, we've got some exciting changes coming to a couple of areas. So if you do look at this, you'll notice that the year-end tasks is leaving prep for taxes. The documents area is also leaving prep for taxes as of the 30th of June. So we are going to focus on the review and adjust area. So the first thing I want to point out here is this big orange rectangle. You'll notice here it's talking about us reviewing and accepting transactions that have been made in the books. So very useful every time changes are made within the QBO file. We do get this notification. We can review these transactions, or we can accept all transactions. So we're going to click here on Accept All Transactions. Second thing I want to point out in Prep for Taxes is this toggle menu here. So we can come down here and change our financial year. We can look at the 22-23 year, or we can go as far back as the 16-17 year. We can also toggle between cash and accrual basis. So if that is more appropriate for your client, you can make that change there. So review and adjust, I like to call the heart of our Prep for Taxes area. What we see here in one bird's eye view is our balance sheet. As we scroll down, we see our current assets, our long-term assets. We see current and non-current liabilities, our shareholder equity accounts. We then move on to our profit and loss, where we see all our income accounts and all our expense accounts, and finally the net earnings. As well as seeing all the accounts across the QBO file, what we see is we see the current financial year that we're going to be working on, we see the previous financial year, and we see the percentage and the dollar changes. We've also got a column for adjusting entries, which we'll talk about shortly. If you like a traditional view and you're more used to the trial balance view, you can turn this toggle on and actually see all that information displayed in a trial balance format. So you'll notice the difference, particularly being the debit and credit columns for each of the financial years. Okay, so what we're going to talk about next is the ability to create notes. You can see here when we click on the little box, we've got the options to add a note. So we can come into any of the items here, any of the accounts, and we can say, so we can ask our staff to please add bank statements. So very useful for being able to collate then. You'll notice once we create a note, there is a yellow dot. So if you are coming in as a reviewer and you've had staff, you might have a query there that you can see. The other thing we can do here within the review and adjust is we can add documents. And you'll notice here, there are some of the accounts with paper clips. So we can add multiple documents. You'll notice here we've got a paper clip with 2. We've got 1 on a long-term savings account. Further down under a business loan, we can see there's a document attached there. So if we click on that, it will actually show us which documents we've actually attached. So in the case of this bank statement, we've got the PDF bank account, which we would expect to see, showing the 30 June balance. And we've also got a reconciliation, our bank reconciliation as well. How we upload documents is we would come into the drop-down arrow here under the actions column, and we would click on Manage Attachments and Links. That will then give us the ability to upload and attach documents to our various accounts. Very, very useful way of putting all our information and all our supporting documentation into one place for our particular clients. Looking at that drop-down menu, you'll notice the ability to make an adjustment, and we'll talk about that shortly. Add a note. So we looked at adding a note directly from the account, but we can also add a note here. We can allocate here to a particular team member to make it visible by all the team or just for ourselves if it is a private note. We can also star the note if we want it to show as a favourite on that particular account. So you'll notice we've got that yellow little dot there, and we can then review and have a look at that note. We can add any comments there that we need to. So moving down the accounts, the idea of our Prep for Taxes area is that we've got to a point where our bookkeepers have lodged the BAS, the accounts are as clean as we expect them to be, and we're going to look through for any particular things that we may need to pick up as adjustments. So what we've noticed here with this particular file is we've got a director loan account, and that is a liability account. It is to Pamela, who is one of the directors. But we actually know that there are 2 directors for this particular file. And so what we would have expected to see was those loan balances split across both of those directors. So we're going to click onto the Make Adjustment. What this is going to do is, this is going to open up a journal page for us. So you'll see here, it's taken us into a journal. It's created the name as the 2024 end of year. It's created the date as 30th of June 2024, and it is marking it as an adjusting journal. The advantage of doing that is that we can then run reports which will show us all of the adjusting journals in one particular place. So what we want to do here, like I said, is to create a director loan account so we can actually add a new account directly from this area of the software. So it's a non-current liability account. We'll call it an other account liability. So this director loan account is for Luke, who is the other 50/50 director in this business. So the balance of Luke's account at the 30th of June 2024 should actually be 8,250, and we're going to take off that same figure from Pamela's loan account. So let's save and close that. When we save and close that, you can see that nothing has changed there at the moment. But if you remember earlier, we talked about these adjustments, which every time we make an adjustment in the accounts, we are alerted to it in this orange box. We can review those transactions that will take us to the journal that we just created, or we can accept those changes. So we're going to accept those changes. And when we do that, what we can see now is we've got that director loan account for Luke. It has the figure of 8,250, which is the credit balance that we were looking for. We can see that Pamela's loan account is also 8,250. And in the particular adjusting entries column here, we can see the 8,250 that has been moved from Pamela's loan account to Luke's loan account. So very, very useful way of picking up all those journal adjustments. You can think probably about many uses for that and many different adjustments that you might do within the accounts. So like I said, as we scroll through the accounts, we also have the ability to mark accounts as prepared when we're happy that we've done them, particularly where you've got a team environment. You can have your team member marking these as prepared. As the reviewer, for a double layer, you can then come in and mark the accounts as reviewed when you've done that. And noting also, we can collapse our columns and actually mark them as prepared and reviewed on a subheading level if we want to. So a couple of other things I want to show you in the Prep for Taxes area. So first of all, our Tools drop-down menu. So if we click on this little drop-down arrow under Tools, we'll see that we've got a few different things we can do here. One of them is we can download a work paper pack. We can carry forward a previous year, and we can also lock the accounts. So downloading a work papers pack, we'll click on that, and that way you can see it will take a few minutes to pull through the data. But what is important here is that what we're downloading is not just these accounts, we're actually downloading every single attachment. You'll see there the download is starting. So we're downloading every single attachment, And we're also downloading details of our notes and all the information we have put in the file. So we're then given a zip document here, which we can save on our own storage. So it is one of the things that often is asked, is that when we've downloaded or uploaded documents here, do we get a copy of them with this download? And so the answer is that we do. The other thing that we can do in Prep for Taxes here is we can export as Excel. And that Excel document is giving us all the information that we've just looked at in Review and Adjust. It's giving us the prepared and prepared by and the prepared by dates. It's giving us details of all those accounts that we've gone through and looked at and reconciled. It's also giving us every single note and details of every note that we've added to the accounts, as well as details of all the attachments and any URL links where that's relevant. So again, very, very useful tool and very useful to keep on your own file as a work paper. The final couple of things that we're going to look at in Prep for Taxes is the ability to lock the accounts. So locking the accounts obviously is what we want to do at the end of year, so we're not making any further adjustments. We're going to look in a few minutes at exporting to Lodgit, but just looking at this drop-down menu here, one of the things you'll notice here is we've also got the ability, when we get to this point and our accounts are prepared, reconciled, finalised, we do have the ability to export to as an MYE file. So for anyone who is using MYOB as a lodging platform. So what we are going to do though is we're going to export to Lodgit, which is going to push this data for Pooch Pamper House into our Lodgit platform. So you'll see now our Lodgit is opening. And you'll notice that the data is now importing from QuickBooks Online. So this is how seamless it is. You can see now that we are in our Lodgit platform. We are in the company tax return for the 23 year, Pooch Pamper House, who is our client. And you'll notice a message here. We've just imported your financial statements from QuickBooks and automatically mapped your accounts. So first of all, we will look at the account mapping in a couple of minutes. But first of all, we're going to have a look here at this company tax return. So company tax return, we've got the company details on the first page here, and we can scroll down. We can use the next button to work through the return. We can also use the shortcut menu items on the top to move to different parts of the return. But what I want to show you first of all is if we click here, QBO, you'll notice on the left-hand side, and we've got sales, which is our sales account. As we scroll down further, under cost of sales, you can see we've got a couple of different cost of sales and cost of goods accounts. And we've got the QBO notation. So all of that information has been imported seamlessly. We haven't done any manual keying of that data to get that into this tax return. So coming back at the top, we're going to have a look at the mapping. So as we said, the information has been automatically mapped from the QuickBooks Online accounts, and we can use this here button to make sure the mapping has been done correctly. So when we click on here, it's going to take us into our accounts area, and you'll notice here everything is split between assets, liabilities, our equity, revenues and expenses. So as we scroll down here, what we can see is on the left-hand side, we see the QuickBooks account. On the right-hand side, we see the QuickBooks tax powered by Lodgit classification. So what we need to do is ensure that everything is mapped in terms of how we want it to show on our tax return. You can see an example here of our long-term savings, which is actually mapped to a short-term cash account. So we can actually click on this drop down. We can change this and actually map this particular item as a non-current liability, if that's more applicable. And we might like to actually put it into the financial investments section. So very easy to come through and to make sure your accounts are mapped correctly. Like I said, we can make changes if and where we need to, but you will find that a lot of the mapping is very intuitive. So coming back into the Work tab for Pooch Pamper House, what we'll see is our company tax return. So we'll click back into the company tax return. And what we're going to do is have a look at a couple of features here. So first of all, this feature here is the compare with prior year feature. If we turn this on, what it will do is for each of the accounts that we look at, it will actually show us prior year figures. So you can see in the 23 year that we're looking at, we've got $29,631. In the prior year, our sales were $72,550. So that comparative button is incredibly powerful in terms of understanding changes from a tax point of view for your particular clients. Next thing we'll look at here is the refresh button. So if we have gone back and made any changes, we can click on update the financials and we will get that refresh data. So the idea of working through our tax return is that we're going to be clicking on validate, and it's going to then pick up any errors in our tax return. So we've got a few errors here. They're all marked in this pink box, and we would need to go through and navigate these and enter the correct details here. So we can put in, this is a private company, this company is a resident, it is a base rate entity. So now when we do validate, you'll see that what's missing here is the public officer's name and phone number. Now, rather than come in here and fill in this detail manually, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a relationship. So we're going to come into the Relationships tab. We can see that we've got Pamela as a director and a shareholder, but what we want to do is add another relationship here. And so we'll pick up Pamela Brown, and we're actually going to come in here to Public Officer and save that. And that will then show Pamela as a public officer for this particular company. When we come back then into the company tax return and we click on validate, we'll just come in and pick up Pamela's name here. Pick up that phone number, and you'll notice now we get a notice that the form is valid. Once a particular form is valid, we can mark it as complete, and we then have the option to send it out for e-signing, remembering that the e-signatures are free within the QuickBooks platform. So I want to show you a couple of other things that we can do within Lodgit. So Prep for Taxes was a work paper area, and definitely an area that you can use for your clients to store work papers and create work papers. But we also have the option in Lodgit to create work papers. So let's click on Add Work Papers here. And let's pick up the 22-23 financial year. We need to pick up an accountant and a reviewer. We can pick up a couple of different reviewers if you have a bigger practice. So when we click on Save, that will actually create a work paper pack for us. Again, it is imported all the balances and splitting them into assets, liabilities, equity, our revenues and expenses. We can then come down the right-hand side, and where we've got status, we can mark through as to whether things are reconciled, whether they've been completed, and finally, whether they've been reviewed at that higher level. So when you click on that, for example, our Bank of Intuit, we know the balance in our QuickBooks is $16,500. So if we know that that was our actual reconciled balance, you'll see there when we put that in, that we actually see that marked as reconciled. We can then upload documents here. So a couple of incredibly powerful ways of storing not just the client's financial information, but that supporting documentation in that one place. So we can either upload files directly, or we can take those files from our library. The other thing I'll show you here is that we've got these set by default to a 5% in terms of materiality. So let's say that our balance in was only expected to be $10,000, or actually let's make it $1,000. And you'll notice there it doesn't show as reconciled because we've got that discrepancy. So coming back into that work paper area, like I said, we can work through the accounts using this as our work paper resource. When we are happy, we can mark this as complete. We can do refreshments as we need to. So if we're happy that the work papers are complete, we can mark it there as complete. And when it has been approved and finalised at that higher review level, we can mark it as reviewed and approved. You notice then our final toggle has turned on. When we come into the work area or the forms area, come into our work area and we'll see those work papers there listed under that client. So a couple of other things that we want to look at here. So one of them is depreciation. So we want to look at how depreciation works in terms of using QuickBooks Tax powered by Lodgit. And so under the tools menu item here, you can see depreciation as our second item here. So let's click on depreciation. And we get a message here. We can set up for a small business entity and use the simplified depreciation rules. What we need to do first of all is set up a depreciation date. So if we are looking at the 30 June 2023, then we will be starting the depreciation from the 1st of July 2022. So we would click on save. So this is setting up our depreciation from a higher level. You can see there our settings were successfully saved. So we can come back into depreciation. And we then have the option to add asset groups. So first thing we would do is turn on the depreciation, which we've just done. We would then create different asset groups. So most commonly, it may be things like motor vehicles. We can create that as the name. We're then going to identify whether it's a business, which would be most common for our company clients. But remembering, we might like to set up depreciation for financial investments, rental properties. So for individual clients, particularly if they've got rental properties with depreciation, interest and dividends. So we'll use our business. Non-primary income, if you needed to change that, we can change that to primary production income. And here with our type, the default is the plant and equipment. We've got motor vehicles as an option there, which we might like to use for our motor vehicle section. So we will save that one. So we'll then come back in to our depreciable assets and we'll create a second asset group here. And we will call this plant and equipment. It's still a business asset for this particular client. But what we'll do here is we're actually going to select the small business immediate write-off for plant. So that is there for any items that we are writing off for our clients. So we can click on save there. So we've then got those two asset groups which we've created. We don't currently have any assets. So what we will do is we will come into our plant and equipment group by clicking on that plant and equipment, and we can add an asset. So we'll add a computer. Our client purchased this on the 2nd of February 2023. The total cost of this asset was $1,400. And what you'll notice is that we don't need to enter any information in terms of depreciable years because it is 100%. So remembering that this is in our immediate asset write-off area. So we're going to click on Save. And that computer is then being saved successfully. If we want to have a look at the depreciation report, we're going to come into Reports on the next toggle menu. And if we click on Depreciation, we then get this depreciation report, which will break it into our different groups. So remembering that we've just added one asset, our computer, to our plant and equipment, but we can see that there, the cost of $1,400, we've written that off in full. So our depreciation is $1,400 and that asset has no value at the end of this financial year. If we come back into that 2023 tax return, and I will unlock that tax return. So remembering that we did lock that before, but if we then come into our profit and loss and scroll down, what we can then do is add that depreciation. And that depreciation will then be showing in our tax return. One of the other things that I want to show you before we look at the special purpose financial reports, we looked at relationships. So we're looking at Pamela Brown. So noticing that we've got different relationships there for spouse, shareholder, public officer, and director. So coming back into Pooch Pamper House, what we want to do now is we want to actually create some special purpose financial reports. So if we are doing end of year, like I said, we've created that prep for taxes work paper package and reconciled our accounts. We've created the tax return for our particular client within the QuickBooks Tax powered by Lodgit. The final part of the process then is to actually create those special purpose financial reports. So under our client here for Pooch Pamper House, we're going to click on Add a Report. When we click on Add a Report, what you'll notice is that we get a couple of options here. Looking on the left-hand side, we've got basic financial reports. And we've got a couple of options here, which you'll see are marked as Lodgit templates. So basic financials for trading, basic financials for a non-trading company. We've also got a set of financial statements that we've actually customized ourselves. So I'm just going to take you into the Manage Templates area just to see how we can do that and how we can actually customize at our own firm level the templates for our special purpose financial reports. So we're going to look primarily now at the basic financial reports. There are some advanced financial reports with some more customization, then that is a paid feature within the Lodgit platform. So like I said, what you'll see here under company is the Lodgit financial reports for both trading and non-trading. And as we move down, we've got the same for our individuals. So our sole trader clients, our partnerships, for our trusts, and also for super funds. So if we wanted to make some further customization, let's say we would like to customize our basic financials for a non-trading company, we can click on that. So this is a predefined template as it tells us here. So you can't change it, but you can customize it. So we're going to click on Create Customized Template. So when we click on that, that's created our new customized template. And we can make any changes we like. We might like to bring the compilation report and the director's declaration to the end of the report. You'll notice we've got our statement of comprehensive income. This is a non-trading entity, so we don't have the statement of trading revenue. Our statement of financial position. We've then got our changes in equity. And quite a new feature is this statement of cash flows. So you might like to keep this in here for your clients. If we do want to remove a report, we can delete that there. We've got our notes to the accounts, the director's declaration, and finally our compilation report. So if we did want to make any changes in here at a template level, we can do that. If we do that, that will save for our templates across all our company clients. Coming into the settings bar, settings toggle here, what we can do is we can actually create a different title. So we might prefer to call this, financial statements. You notice here we can show the cents if we want to. By default, they do not show. And we can have the indentation if we like, or we can leave that off. You'll also notice comparison periods. So most common is 1 year, but we can change that if we have a need for that. And we can also make it none if it is a new client or a new entity that's trading for the first time. So if we come back into templates, we'll then see that template that we've just created here called financial statements. We can actually star that if we'd like to actually move it to our favorites. And we've then got the ability to duplicate or to delete it if we no longer want that template. So we will come back into our Pooch Pamper House client and we'll come into add a report. And so what we will do is we'll add that starred set of financial statements. So we'll open that up. We'll set that to the previous financial year. We can change that report name here if we want to. We can create those reports. And what that has done is that has produced our set of special purpose financial reports. It's pulling in our data from our QuickBooks Online file. And as we scroll down, we move to our statement of financial position. You'll notice all the QB indications here showing us that that information has come from our QuickBooks file. And scrolling down, we get to our notes section, our director's declaration, and our compilation report. Now, within the client level, you'll notice our Pooch Pamper House is our client. It could be that for this particular client, they don't ever hold inventories. And so the inventory part of this note, in note number 1, we actually want to remove. So we can come in within the client level, remove that piece of information. For our template, it will keep the information on inventories, but at this client level, it will actually have been removed. When we're finished with these accounts, we can click on completed, and we've then got the option, similar to our tax returns, to request the e-signature and actually then send that out to our client for signing. You'll notice here with the messages, we can customize this message. So if you want to do any further tailoring, we can do that here as well. So we can send that to that client. The client will get a message to sign those financial statements. And once they're signed, we'll then be able to publish them. So coming back into the work tab for Pooch Pamper House, what we can see here is a tab here which shows all work. That shows all the forms that we've previously created for this particular client. We've got forms that are in progress, so forms that we are current, we haven't yet finalised. We've got forms that are being reviewed, so things that we have finalised. And we've then got the out to sign. So this one here, we just sent those statement of the special purpose financial reports to our client. And so they're sitting there in the out to sign. Finally, you'll notice the finish tab. That'll show us where we've got financial reports. We looked earlier at the work papers. So any of our forms or reports that have actually been signed and marked as finished. You'll notice here within Lodgit that we are looking at that particular client, but remembering that we can come back into our dashboard, and that actually then shows us all our clients across our practice. So in this case here, we've got 91 pieces of work. We've got 5 things that have not yet started. We can click on that and see what they are. So we've got some activity statements and some BAS statements. And finally, we've then got those forms which are finished and have been processed. So very quickly, before we look back at our QuickBooks Online accountant platform, we're just going to have a quick look at the settings function here. So under settings and under profile is where you're going to find a lot of the options that you need to enter in your Lodgit platform. If we click here on this icon, we can actually come into account. And we can then come in and add a profile picture, change signature details, change passwords if we need to. We'll then move through under settings. We'll move into the settings tab. And this is where we can add a little bit of branding. You'll see here, I've picked up a picture. We've got some primary colors. You'll notice moving down here, we've got e-signatures. So you can be notified when documents have been signed, not signed, or declined. Client reminders is incredibly powerful because what happens is if our clients haven't signed any of the forms that we've sent to them on the Lodgit platform, they will get reminders, in this case here, every 5 days. But we can change that very easily. I know some advisors like to send reminders every 3 days. I know some prefer to wait till a 7-day period. So that can be saved here. And so finally, I want to show you the email templates. So people often are not sure what they can prepare in Lodgit. So everything from the special purpose financial reports that we looked at, our individual company tax returns, trust partnership, our self-managed super funds, our BAS and IAS, fringe benefits, and all these other forms here, including the TPAR report, can all be prepared within the Lodgit platform. Noting as well with the email templates that you can come in here and across the firm, you can actually customize this email template. So we've put a message here. We would love you to give us a referral. If we think that's not appropriate for our individual clients, we can remove that, and that will then take that message away for our individual tax return clients. So hopefully that has given you a look at the Lodgit platform, how Lodgit works with the QuickBooks file, and how it works to prepare those special purpose financial reports. So we're now going to move back into our QuickBooks Online accountant. So we're going to come back into our QuickBooks Online accountant file. And if you remember earlier in the webinar, we created a project to review the client engagement letter. So it's quite useful to be doing that on an annual basis. A lot of us do that on an annual basis. So if we come down to our projects area here in our QBOA file, what you'll see is we've got a project down here, which is the one that we actually created a little bit earlier this morning. So let's click on that one. So this was our client engagement letter for Pooch Pamper House. We created that project. So at the moment, we don't have any income or costs against that. But what we want to do is we want to actually add some hours to that. So we've actually spent some time reviewing the engagement letter. We want to record those hours. There's a couple of different ways that we can do that. So one is if we click on this little drop down here, we've actually got the option to add some time here to this project. The other way we can do it is by clicking on plus new. We can actually add either a weekly timesheet or a single time entry. So if we click on single time entry, what we can actually do is we can pull up the particular employee who's worked on this project. So we've got already behind the scenes a cost rate. We can either set a start time and an end time, or we can add in just a time itself. So let's click in a start and an end time. So in this case here, we had started at 9 o'clock and we spent an hour reviewing the engagement. We can put in details here and we can save and close that time entry. And just making sure we allocate that here to our client engagement for Pooch Pamper House. So selecting that client. When we click save and close, and we'll click on refresh here. And what we would expect to see, and I may have a small glitch, but we would expect to see those time activities here. So there we go. We've got that cost, that $88, and there's our time entry for the work we've done on that client engagement letter. So the projects tool is very powerful and there's a lot of different ways that you can use it in your firm. So if you're not using a practice management tool or you're not happy with that tool, have a think about using the projects tab within your QBOA platform. So I'm going to move on to some Q&A. We've had some Q&A come in throughout this webinar. So I'm going to start with the first question I've got here. And as I do that, I'll take you back through the software if we need to demonstrate anything that will be helpful for the question. So the first question I have is, what happens to all our documents if we lose access to the QBOA file? So thank you for that question, Sarah. So if we are talking about the documents that we've uploaded in our prep for taxes area, so remembering that we did that a bit earlier on, we were talking about uploading things like bank statements, etc. If we have done that, we'll come in here to where we've got some documents. So we had some documents that we had uploaded. Come back into our client. Remembering the download that we talked about. So provided you have done a download, and I would recommend that you always do a download. We got a zip file, and what I mentioned was that when you do that download, that will create a zip file, which actually includes every PDF that you have uploaded to the file. So I think it's very, very useful and incredibly important to do that, because particularly if your client owns the file, they can take away that access. So I would always be coming in here to the tools, come into download work paper pack, and I would always be extracting that work paper pack and saving that on your own storage. So another question, so Bruce, this question was, does Lodgit allow other forms, for example, TPAR? So yes, I did show that at the end of looking at Lodgit, that there were various different forms. So basically, if it's an ATO form, Lodgit will prepare it, and certainly within Lodgit, we can prepare our TPAR or taxable payments annual reports form. Okay, so I've got another question here, which is from Denise. So I'm a new pro advisor. How do I get access to Lodgit? So that is a fantastic question. So let me just show you back into your QBOA dashboard. So provided you've got a QBOA login, if you're a new advisor, I would assume you've got your QBOA login. What you can do is you can come into the Advisor tab under the Your Practice. And if you come into Benefits, what you'll then see is I'm working with a training file here, but you'll then be able to look at which tier you are and therefore what benefits you're entitled to. But even at the silver benefits, you are entitled, as you can see here, to free access to Lodgit with various different amounts of forms. What you would need to do is click on Activate under the tier that you're in, and that will then take you through a process of signing up to create your Lodgit file. The other thing I would recommend you to do is to reach out to your account manager. So if you're not sure or you're having any problems, either reach out to your account manager or reach out to the QuickBooks support, and they should be able to help you get that all set up properly. So I've got another question here. This one's an interesting question, which I've heard sometimes from advisors. So this question is from David. This question is, I'm looking in my client's file, but I can't find access to the Prep for Taxes area. What am I doing wrong? So with this question, what I would suggest, David, is remembering that Prep for Taxes, so we can see it here on our QBOA dashboard under clients. We also see it in the accountant toolbox. It is only available for pro advisors. So I'm wondering whether you're actually using a user login and not a QuickBooks Online accountant login. That would be what I would first of all check. The easiest way to check is whether you have a display like this with all your clients. But if you're logging into clients individually and then having to log out to get to another client, you're probably using a user login and therefore you won't see any of these tools. So just having a look here under the drop down, I have this big list of all the clients here within my training file. So check that one out, David. And again, reach out to your a partner manager if you're not sure with that or if that doesn't help. So I've got another question here, which is why there's so many areas in Prep for Taxes being updated, and do we know when we might see what's coming? So let's hop back into Pooch Pamper House, and that question is from Annabelle. When I first showed you the Prep for Taxes, I did just very quickly show you those areas that are being updated. To answer your question, in terms of why they're being updated, QuickBooks are always working with advisors, with accountants like myself and yourself, asking what we need, asking how they can make it better. And so one of the things they found is the year-end tasks was fairly redundant, and that's why it's being removed. The Documents tab is also quite redundant because we saw within Review and Adjust that we can add all our source documents. In terms of what's coming, I'm very excited to know, and I don't know, but I would say stay tuned because it will be just around the corner. So keep hopping into your Prep for Taxes area and having a look, because I'm hoping that it rolls out early in the new financial year. So I think that's probably all we've got time for in terms of questions. I'm just going to move back into my slide deck here. If there are other questions, you can reach out as well to anyone in the QuickBooks team. So I want to thank everybody for attending today. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to take you through the Work tab, Prep for Taxes, the QuickBooks Online, QuickBooks Tax powered by Lodgit, looking at company tax returns, special purpose financial reports, creating depreciation, creating relationships and mapping accounts, and finally just having a look at that billing and using that projects tab. So thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.